Welcome to your Canadiens Connection on Rocket Sports Radio. We are proud to be the trusted source for all things Habs for more than a decade. This is the Canadiens Connection podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio, keeping you informed, engaged, and entertained. My name is Michael Spinella, and I'll be your host for the next hour. This is episode 263 of the Canadiens Connection podcast, and I'm very pleased to be joined in the studio by my co-host, the editor of the Hockey News Montreal, and the founder and president of Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. And Rick, how are you doing today?
You know, if our pre-shows have anything to do with the mood and the excitement that's going on in Montreal, this is going to be an excellent show. We had so much to talk about in the pre-show. We've got so much to talk about in this episode. And especially we have 10 burning questions to talk about a little later. I'm doing well. Can you believe it? We're halfway through the preseason schedule already. And by next weekend, that will be all wrapped up and done. We'll be looking at the opening night to the 2023-24 season. So why don't you tell everybody what we're going to be talking about today?
Well, here in the first segment, we do have some games to talk about, so we'll get you started on that, followed by some roster news. We'll get into the Habs prospects a little bit, and in the segment, we have some hockey news along with some quotes from some of the players. In segment 2, we have our 10 burning questions about the Montreal Canadiens for the 2023-24 season. So that's going to be a really fun discussion as well. And of course, in the third segment, it's the Have Your Say segment. Our Canadiens Connection question of the week is, who has impressed and who has disappointed you so far this preseason? We want to hear from you. And Rick, what's the best way for our listeners to reach out and let us know their thoughts?
We have a text number. It is 5853-ROCKET, 5853-ROCKET. I'll say it one more time, 5853-ROCKET. Just text us 24 hours a day and let us know what you're thinking about, what questions you have, what questions you would pose to the players. And we have our staff on site, so we can actually do that for you. 5853-ROCKET if you have a little bit more to say. And people discovered our email this week, it seems. We've got some long-form emails. You can reach out to us at hello@rocketsportsmedia.com.
You can also reach out to us on our social media. Just make sure you're following at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And you can check us out on our website, canadiensconnection.fm. So like I said, we do have some games to talk about. Make sure as the season goes on, you check out our comprehensive game previews and post-game recaps for every Canadiens game at thn.com/Montreal. Going back to last Sunday, September the 24th, it was the red versus white game, the annual scrimmage. This is to raise money for a charity, a bit of an inter-squad type deal. It was a sold-out Bell Center, and they made over $200,000. Wow. So great job, everyone in Montreal. That goes to the Montreal Children's Foundation. As per the actual game, Team Red comes away with a victory, 4-3. Standouts for me, Jared Davidson, of course. That's somebody that I'd love to see get more ice time. He seems like someone that can generate a ton of offense in the little opportunities that he's had. Matthias Norlinder, really good offensively minded defenseman. Of course, he's going to stand out quite a bit in a scrimmage for his offensive capabilities. And of course, Nick Suzuki, who sealed the win with the shootout winner at the very end to give Team Red the victory.
A friendly game and a friendly crowd and a win-win for everybody. It was a lot of fun. And it was in a offensively minded game. There's no contact game. There was players that stood out, and I'd agree with the ones that you picked. Matthias Norlinder, kind of a phoenix. Everybody had written his career off. He looked pretty good. And we told you if you've been listening to the Canadiens Connection last season, we were on the Jared Davidson train, reporting regularly about him and telling you to, mark him down, watch him if you could. He's wherever he plays this season, whether it's Laval or he gets a call up, he is going to be a force, I think.
Yeah, I should mention as well, I had the opportunity to stop by this game. This is actually a really great event. You can get the tickets for like $10 each, so good opportunity for those families to come out on a Sunday afternoon, especially with the price of what regular season tickets are nowadays. So definitely recommend that. And I guess the nice perk as well was getting a free bag of chips and a nice can of Coke. So can't complain about that. Yeah. But after that, the very next day, that's when the preseason really began. The Canadiens have 6 games in their preseason schedule this season, and starting on September the 25th, the New Jersey Devils come to Montreal, and they win 4-2. I have to say, not the greatest performance coming from Montreal. Slafkovsky had a chance in the top line with Alex Newhook, and didn't really seem to stand out too much. Samuel Montembeault, not the greatest game. He was all right, but a bit of a rough goal that bounced I thought harmlessly off the boards. Somehow gets past him. Not sure how that works, but I'm sure he'd want that one back. And then Jakub Dobis comes in to split the game. He makes 11 saves off of 13 shots.
Montembeault called that goal one of the worst goals he had ever given up in his entire life. It was ugly. Better to get that out of the way in preseason. There was a lot of eyes on Slafkovsky. Maybe kind of a bad matchup for him. Josh Anderson and Alex Newhook, 2 speedsters. He had trouble keeping up in that game. Logan Mailloux seemed to be everywhere in that game. He stood out quite often and creating chances and the offensive side of his game. David Reinbacher had an uncomfortable start. He was a little shaky to begin, but paired with Cayden Primeau, I thought he got better as the game went on.
They got a day of rest in between before their next game, and this one was on September the 27th, and Montreal actually wins a preseason game. I don't believe they won one last season, so it's nice that the curse is now broken. Montreal gets 4, Ottawa gets 3. And let's be honest, this was not a very deep Ottawa lineup. They put in, I guess, a few regulars in Dominic Kubalik and Matthew Joseph. But beyond that, it was a lot of big physical goons that didn't really make much of an impact on the game, let's be real. Slafkovsky did score, so that was kind of a nice confidence booster, as he said during the intermission. I saw him get one nice odd man rush after that, but again, there's some consistency issues there. Lots of penalties, 22 penalty minutes for the Habs, 18 for Ottawa. I don't think any of those were for a fight, unfortunately. These were all just minors. Not great, and what stood out to me the most was the Habs' success on the face-off dot, winning about 63% of those.
Especially Kirby Dach. You know how he has been knocked about his face-off ability. I think he was around 62% on the night at the face-off dot. Again, as you said, Ottawa's roster, there's A rosters, there's B roster. This might be the C roster. And their lineup was dotted with Zach McEwen and Mark Kostelic and Donovan Zabrango, all rugged kind of characters that were taking their liberties over the night with the Canadiens. But Kirby Dach, in addition to his face-off success, I thought he was all over. He was dominant in this game, and Kirby Dach, Juraj Slafkovsky benefited from being with Kirby Dach. I thought he looked much more comfortable. Yes, he got the goal, but apart from the goal, he was much more comfortable out there. The one part we should mention, we'll talk about it later, is that Cayden Primeau was a late add to the game. And he played on the first pairing in this one. Why are the lineups the way they are? The Devils game, they sent a split squad. Half their squad stayed home to play the Flyers on the same night that they were facing the Canadiens. So a little bit undermanned there. The Ottawa Senators, they had 2 games at home against the Leafs, and they had their A squad, their B squad, at home for their fans. So they sent the C squad on the road, and that seems to be the case at least for the first 3 or 4 games of the preseason, that teams send a pretty rough-looking roster on the road. They keep their star players at home.
And that was very much the deal last night, Friday, September the 29th, when Montreal faced off against Toronto at home again, and Toronto comes away with a 2-1 victory. Habs go 0 for 6 on the power play, and not too many notes beyond that. Kind of a boring game overall. Didn't really find that any Habs stood out to me personally.
Yeah, it was. It was a snoozer for sure, and that's unfortunate. The Canadiens had a real opportunity. I thought, given the roster that was shipped to Montreal by Toronto, David Alter, our colleague with the Hockey News, had just looked at the salaries for the entire roster that were in Montreal on Friday night. He said there were just 2 forwards with an AAV over $2 million and just 2 defensemen with an AAV over $1 million. So we're talking about, most players being on the NHL minimum and being AHL players. I think one of the things that everybody was looking forward to was seeing Arbor Jacki come against Ryan Reeves. Had a few, bumps through the game, but cooler heads prevailed, and we wouldn't have wanted to see anyone get injured in a meaningless fight in the preseason.
So the Canadiens' record through these exhibition games is 1-2-0, and that's better than last year and might even be better than the year before that. Please make sure you're checking out the Habs Notepad, Habs headlines, and feature articles and game day posts appearing regularly at thn.com/Montreal. Taking a look at our roster news, and you hinted towards this one, but Michael Matheson is out as a precaution. He was supposed to dress against Ottawa, but at the last minute he was taken out. It seems like a little bit of a weird situation, doesn't it?
Yeah, we're told that it's a lower body that's bothering him, that he would have played the game if it was a regular season, and that it's not related to the injury that he had last season. So I suppose that's good news.
Yeah. The Canadiens currently have 68 players on their training camp, and when are the cuts coming? This is a lot of players. They started with over 70. I believe they cut 4, and there's still it seems like more than 2 rosters on this team. And we have Laval camp coming up pretty soon. So, Rick, any idea when we might hear about these cuts?
Well, it's bizarre. It's absolutely, we've never seen this with 2 weeks in and 68 players. That's more than all the other teams even started with. We're seeing cuts. The Capitals, the Flyers, they're down to about 40 odd players at this time. The Canadiens have 20 extra. They have a whole roster extra of players at camp. And Marty St. Louis said that he knows what it's like going to a camp without much of a chance, without getting an opportunity to play and being cut early. So he wanted to give an opportunity to everyone. I think, if the Canadian situation was different, if their outlook for the season was different, if they were going to be a playoff team, if they were going to be a contending team, this would be a major issue because, every single night the lines are in the blender, the defense pairings are mixed up. There's no opportunity, or there hasn't been so far, for players to get comfortable. And in the drills, we've heard from players who say, no, the coaches haven't spoken to me. We just haven't. There's too many players for that to happen. Any kind of individual instruction. So this is a new approach, something Marty wanted to do. He's trying it. We'll see how it works, but there has to be, after the Saturday night game against the Leafs, we have to see major cuts because, as you said, there's a Laval camp coming up.
Yeah, I should mention as well that there are some players that haven't been cut yet that are on one-way AHL deals. So to me, that's a little bit peculiar that they are still sticking around. I'm all for giving chances to all the players, but this might be a little bit too dramatic, no?
Maybe, yeah, I agree.
Jeff Gordon made some media rounds over the last couple days, and he had an opportunity to talk about the state of the Canadiens. There were a couple interviews, I believe, split up into some different articles. And Rick, I'll let you go ahead and give a nice summary about this.
Yeah, I think that nice to see the vice president of hockey operations making himself available to the media, talking about there's lots of questions going on, and we're going to talk about the 10 most burning questions in the second segment. So stay tuned for that. There are lots of question marks with this team and how it's all going to unfold, how the season's going to unfold, and he was making the rounds in the media trying to let people know his views. There's been a ton of talk about Slafkovsky, and it's unfortunate on social media that there's some people who rightly criticize him and are expecting more, and others saying, well, we weren't happy with the pick anyway, and you always hate him, and the conversations get silly. Yuri Slafkovsky, let's be honest, he hasn't looked like a first overall pick. He didn't last year. He hasn't so far in camp. He looked much more comfortable in that second game. He got back-to-back games where he got to play, and I think that was good for him. It was great to see him score. Not because his goal showed any special skill, but just to get that weight off of his back and to see him smile and to see him comfortable. Jeff Gordon knows what's been said about him. He can't come out and say, he's been fantastic, he's been dominating, he's been using his size. He can't say any of those things. So what he's talking about is being patient with Slafkovsky, and he said, listen, I'm not someone who goes out and asks for patience for everything, for every player, but he was an 18-year-old player arriving in Montreal. Everybody's got to relax and let him develop. I think we agreed and we're advocating that it probably would have made sense for him to spend some time in Laval last year. That didn't happen. Then the injury came in January. And now he's kind of got to start again. And it's going to take time to do that. He's not a Nathan McKinnon. He's not a Connor McDavid. He's not a Connor Bedard. He's not a Jack Hughes, who we saw this week. He's going to develop in his own time, and I think that was the point that Jeff Gordon wanted to stress. Jeff Gordon was asked for his which prospect in the NCAA and in Europe that he was most excited about. I was expecting him to say Lane Hudson. He didn't. His first answer was Adam Engstrom, and talked about how well he's played. And then he went on to talk about the Russian players, the goaltender, Volokin, who, we didn't know a lot about. Vinny Riondo found this guy, so Gordon was promoting him, and also someone who we featured last week, Bogdan Konushkov, and he was praising him, saying what a good start that he was off to this season. He was asked about the three-headed goaltender situation. We heard Darren Dreger on the broadcast on Friday night saying the Canadiens might be open to carrying three goaltenders at the beginning of the season. Gordon didn't rule it out. He said that there are other ways of dealing with the situation, but he didn't go any further than that. He noted that J.F. Uhl is in his last year of his contract in Laval, doesn't have a renewal yet. That's something to keep an eye on for us. How well has J.F. Uhl developed talent in the previous years? How well will he develop a ton of talent down there this year? all that Gorton would say is, we'll talk and we'll sort things out. The last piece of information, little tidbit that Gorton touched on, was the fact that he is now a deputy governor of the NHL for the Montreal Canadiens. Who knew that Michael Andlauer was the deputy governor for the Canadiens, and with his departure to Ottawa, a spot opened up, and that is now Jeff Gorton.
So lots of very interesting tidbits in there. I feel like it was pretty spread out between a few different articles, but we felt it was important to give a little bit of a summary of some of the things that Jeff Gorton talked about there. So now I think it's a good time to get to our Habs prospect report.
It's time for the Rocket Report. The Rocket Sports Media Team is your premier source for information about the Laval Rocket, the AHL affiliate of the Montreal Canadiens, as well as Habs prospects playing in the CHL, NCAA, and leagues around the world. Bookmark thn.com/Montreal to follow our comprehensive coverage of Canadiens prospects.
So we've been trying to give a highlight to one of the Habs prospects currently playing. As we know, the Canadiens prospects over in Europe have their seasons underway. And this week, we'd like to shine the spotlight onto forward Alexander Gordine. He was the 171st pick in 2020. Currently, he's playing in the VHL. That's the KHL's version of the AHL. And in 10 games, he's got about 9 points. So a nice start to his season over there.
Yeah, a really nice start. And a 22-year-old, as you said, 2020 draft pick. This, over the last week or so, he had 6 points in 3 games, 3 goals and 3 assists in that 3-game stretch. And so that gives him 9 points in 10 games. That's pretty strong. I think he's has moderate skill. He has a good shot, and he's a bit of an elusive player. So, as we said, we're going to focus on some prospects, one per week. We'll put the spotlight on them, and bring you names that you might not have heard of, names that the mainstream folks don't like to talk about. And we'll focus on them. I'm just going to refer back to Bogdan Knyzhkov, the player that we spotlighted last week, and we talked about how much Igor Larionov, the coach for Torpedo, liked him and was using him in and around averaging 24 minutes a game for such a young player. He was taken at the recent draft in the 4th round. And some comments came out this week. He did an interview with TVA Sport, and he said, I'm just going to read some of these quotes, Larionov on Knyzhkov. One thing is certain, he will become one of the best defensemen in the KHL. As for the NHL, he would be able to play there this year, and he'd be pretty good. Okay. And he said, in my opinion, if I sent him to you today, he would be a key player for Montreal. I know the team. I know the players. I saw a few Canadiens games last year, and I know for Bogdan, his skill level, his work ethic, his thirst to be the best player would mean that he would be effective this season. That's incredibly high praise. He goes on to say that Bogdan's skills are his ability to read the game, his talents. His hockey IQ is very, very high. He knows how to deal with any situation. He never panics with the puck, and he's constantly finding the right option, the right solution, no matter the circumstances. He's brilliant, and he's a good person to have in a locker room.
Yeah, very high praise coming from a legendary player. Love to hear that about Knyzhkov. This is a player that, like you said before, this is someone that we don't really hear much about in the mainstream media. He doesn't get a whole lot of attention. And if Larionov is saying that this is a guy that could play in the NHL, well, I don't think we can put his theory to the test, unfortunately. But you know what? It's very high praise, and now I have a little bit of excitement about him.
For sure. And yes, we can't put that to the test because he has a 3-year contract in the KHL. I think the soonest we'd see him is the 26-27 season, something like that.
Mm-hmm. So as we mentioned before, Laval Rocket training camp is coming up soon, and well, it's scheduled for Sunday, October the 1st. And like I was saying too, there's not any cuts in the main camp, so I feel like those have to come soon. Otherwise, there might not be any players showing up to this training camp. The first preseason game that Laval has to play is Thursday in Toronto.
And interestingly enough, it's an afternoon game. Laval plays 2 afternoon games, one in Toronto, one in Laval, and both are closed to the public, which is interesting, not something I'd heard of before. I asked our AHL guru, Patrick Williams, and he said it's just a cost issue. It costs money to open the doors, and so they've decided to have those 2 games closed to the public. So what you're going to want to do is make sure that you're following Amy Johnson, Chris G, and making sure you're heading to thn.com/Montreal for the game reviews for those preseason games that Laval will be playing.
Yeah, and I'll say it again, you can find all the content about Canadiens prospects in general at thn.com/Montreal. And coming soon, find the best English language coverage of the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League at thn.com/QMJHL. We're very excited to get that started.
Do you know what we've been begging them to cut, not we don't want to see anybody cut, but it makes sense to have players cut, and we're going to break some news. The Canadiens have just announced Lucas Condata, Mitchell Stevens, Nicholas Baudin, and Brady Keeper have been placed on waivers for the purpose of loaning them to the Laval Rockets. So there's a group of players that will be at camp on Sunday morning as Laval Rocket open their camp.
Yeah, I think some players with a few years under their belts, mostly in lower leagues like the AHL. So I don't think it's a big surprise to see any of those players get cut from the main camp.
You're right.
And on that note, I think it's a good time to get to our quotes of the week. This week, we hear from 3 players at Canadiens training camp who are on very different career paths, very different points in their hockey journeys. To start, John Parker Jones. Well, just a little bit of a background on John Parker Jones. This is a guy who spent some time, probably mostly in the ECHL. He got some AHL time as well in Laval last season. He's big. He's probably more of a fighter and a protector type player. And this quote, he's talking about how excited he is about finishing his first preseason game.
Even though it's just preseason, I don't really look at it that way because, like I said, this is something I haven't done before, and that is definitely the highest level of hockey I've played in my entire life. So I can look back at video, I can take the lessons I learned from that, the things that worked, the things that didn't work, and I can contribute that into my game. Whether I'm in Laval, I can use that. Whether I've got another chance here at all, right? It's just whatever worked out there, I can take that, and whatever didn't work.
Do you want me to play that again and slow it down this time? He is tremendously excited. John Parker Jones is 6'7", I believe. When he was in the press conference, he was about 7.5 feet tall. He was just floating. He was so excited after having played his first game. And these are the moments. This is we were mildly criticizing Marty St. Louis' strategy earlier, but these are the kind of moments that happen when Marty gets everybody into a preseason game. John Parker Jones, bottom 6 AHL player and kind of a tweener. He may spend some time in Trois-Rivières also this year, but his first chance of playing in an NHL preseason game. His ceiling, is he going to make it to the NHL? Probably not. But here he had an opportunity, and he was a standout in a boring game. He was a standout. He played well. That fourth line with Jan Mysak, I thought they had some energy and they played really well. And he was, just floating on a cloud after the game, and excited for the opportunity that he got.
Yeah, excited for the opportunity, excited for being able to go and watch some tape and learn. So you have to feel excited for John Porter-Jones as well. And the next bit of audio we have is kind of the opposite of that. This comes from Cayden Primeau. This is going to be a big year for Cayden Primeau. This is a big preseason for him to try and prove himself. And just listen to him. He's talking about being a calm goaltender. Let me know what you think.
I'm a calm goalie, so I try to make the team, feed off of that. When your goalie's up and down, not even keel, that the guys can feed off of that vibe, and then your team is kind of out of whack. So, just trying to be that level base back there for the guys.
Okay. Tense, really tense, anxious, just the pressure of the world on him. If you watch that, he's tensing his body, he's tensing his face, he's measuring his words, and he's talking about how important it is to be calm as a goaltender. It was a real odd juxtaposition of those, what he wanted to say didn't fit with his body language, and he would he's under so much pressure, and you can see how uncomfortable he is in his own skin. A really difficult situation for him. He wants more. He maybe has some of the physical tools to get there. He just hasn't put it together mentally, and his performances have been okay, a little bit unspectacular. On Friday night, there was a turnover in his own end, so okay, blame the defenseman for that. But it was a long shot. It was from the slot, but the high slot, a long shot, a wrist shot, not a dangerous shot, from a player who hadn't scored a goal in the AHL last season. It was a stoppable puck, and Cayden Primeau couldn't stop the puck. And I think that he can be a much better goaltender out of the organization than in because the pressure is just immense, and you can see it on the poor guy's face every time he's interviewed. And this was just such a stunning quote because it didn't match at all, the way he appeared.
Part of being a goaltender is having that mental struggle and being able to keep yourself in check mentally. And it's a very difficult thing to do. It just sounds like Cayden Primeau just does not have that at the moment. And we'll talk a little bit about Cayden Primeau when we get into that second segment. So I think we'll leave that one there. And we'll move on to someone that had a pretty good sense of humor about a mistake he made in the game. This quote's coming from Logan Mailloux.
Yeah, it was a bit of both, but I didn't really need them to. I kind of noticed that right away when I got back to the bench. Maybe don't forecheck one of the best players in the NHL on the PK. So I definitely learned from that, and you won't see me being F1 on the PK anytime soon, that's for sure.
So that was Logan Mailloux, and of course he was talking about, it was his first preseason game. He was out on the penalty kill, and for some reason, he was the first guy in on the forecheck, and the guy he was forechecking was Jack Hughes. And didn't go well for Logan. He got back into the zone. A mistake by Josh Anderson, and it was a power play goal for New Jersey. But I just liked the way he dealt with that. He was asked, did somebody talk to you about that? And he said, yeah, they talked to me on the bench. They talked to me after the game. He said, but I didn't really need to hear about that from them. I knew exactly that I had made a mistake, and it was just overzealous. He wanted to do well, and it was just, Logan Mailloux is going to going to make big plays and he's going to make big mistakes. It was a very bold move, and it just really stood out. But I really liked the way he handled that.
Yeah, I think handling very, very well. It's a preseason, so I think you can have a little bit of fun with your mistakes, of course. And like you said, this is a young defenseman. Mistakes are going to happen. It's just nice to know that he's brushing it off and learning a lesson from it.
And then right away, somebody, one of the reporters, tossed a French question at him, and let's just continue this clip.
Logan, ça enlève ton français est excellent. Comme dit, si je te pose une question pour ce soir, qu'est-ce que tu me réponds? À quoi tu t'attends?
Ouais, je pressais. Ouais.
À quoi tu t'attends pour le match de ce soir, ton deuxième match préparatoire?
Ouais, comme j'ai dit, ça va être chic jouer contre les Leafs ici. C'est l'équipe de ma mère, je veux les battre ce soir, ça va être cool.
Très bon. Merci Logan.
Merci.
C'est bon, yeah. All the reporters stunned, absolutely stunned. Somebody just threw out a question in French to him, and he batted it right back, handled it really well. He talked. It was a question about facing the Leafs. He said it's my mom's favorite team. The Leafs are my mom's favorite team, so I really want to beat them. But calm, composed, had fun with it. Being able to think on his feet and to think and speak in French, very impressive. Really turned some heads in that media availability. The reporters have a whole new respect for Logan Mailloux.
Yeah, very well done, and he deserves a lot of credit for how he's handled that. And he sounds very comfortable in these interviews too. That's it's not an easy thing for a young player to be able to learn all at once.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll take a look around the league for some hockey news, and there's some familiar names that have been on the waiver wire recently. Pittsburgh put Rem Pitlick and Xavier Ouellet on there. Both have cleared. And then the New York Rangers have put Alex Belzile on there. So too bad the Habs missed out on a chance of bringing back one of these guys to be a stud in their lineup, right?
Yeah, I guess the important part there is that there were fans saying, "Why? I love Rem Pitlick. I love Alex Belzile, but weren't able to make the rosters of Pittsburgh and of the New York Rangers."
Some unfortunate news coming out of Washington. Joel Edmondson will miss up to 6 weeks with a fractured hand. Not a great start for him. I kind of feel for him to start the season that way, and injuries just seem to be catching up to him.
There were a lot of questions when he was traded. Why didn't Kent Hughes get more for him? Well, his injury issues were part of that equation. And there was real concern about his back, and could his back hold up for another full season with the Capitals. Wasn't his back this time, a fractured hand, a freak injury in the preseason, and he'll be out for a bit.
So not too long after Michael Andlauer was officially named the Ottawa Senators' new owner, he got cooking, and he brings in Steve Staios as president of hockey operations. Staios leaves the Oilers front office, so Andlauer brings in one of his guys. He seems to have a good relationship with them, and I guess he'll be there to help out Pierre Dorion. I think some people were expecting Dorion could get the boot, but he'll be around for a little while, and I think it's nice that Staios will be able to come in and bring a different perspective to that organization. Staios
is a very smart hockey guy, and did a good job with the Hamilton Bulldogs. We know that Michael Andlauer, he owned the Bulldogs when they were an AHL affiliate, and then brought the Belleville Bulls to Hamilton and became the OHL Hamilton Bulldogs, then on to Brantford. So there was an association there, and Michael Andlauer. This was kind of a secret that everybody knew, and I think this is a really good ad, a really strong statement by Michael Andlauer.
And this is probably neither here nor there, but it seems like that Patrick Waugh shaved rumor hasn't really gone anywhere as of yet. I don't want to put any more fuel to that fire, just on the note of Van Lauer bringing in some of his guys. Ending the segment on a bit more of a difficult topic, Chris Nyland has joined Boston University's study on CTE. Chris Nyland's a player who's been in over 300 fights during his pro hockey career. Over the years, he has struggled with some addiction and anger problems, and Rick, I'll let you talk about this in a little bit more detail.
So CTE, it's the brain injury and can only be detected so far after death. We know a number of fighters, Bob Probert and Wade Belak, Todd Ewan, Steve Montador, all diagnosed after death with CTE. And we on the podcast last season, we talked about Henri Richard. His family had included him in a study to have his brain analyzed. He was diagnosed with CTE, and he had died in 2020, I believe. And interesting connection there is Chris Nyland was part of the group that protected Henri Richard, not a fighter at all. So this apparently started with Bob Probert's widow, Danny. She was a guest on Chris Nyland's podcast about a year ago. And Chris, the fights between Bob Probert and Chris Nyland were legendary, but after they retired, they became good friends. And then in 2010, I believe it was Bob Probert dying from a heart attack. He was only 45 years old. Danny, his widow, donated his brain to have it studied. He was diagnosed with CTE. And as part of the study, Danny was asked questions about Bob, and a lot of questions, very detailed questions about the fights that he was in and how he felt afterwards and all that sort of thing. She couldn't answer. And so she pleaded with Chris Nyland to answer those questions now while he could to aid the study. So Chris Nyland in the spring joined this Boston University study on CTE. And it's called the HOPE study. They had been working on dementia patients, and then they broadened into CTE. And very, very intensive, involved a long questionnaire. And they talked about on page 68 of the questionnaire, so it's very comprehensive. They asked Chris, have you ever injured your head or neck in a fight, or have you ever been hit by someone? And so pretty basic question. As you said, Chris, more than 300 fights, so kind of an expert on the topic. And so he went through this questionnaire. He also participated in some MRIs, and then the study was able to give him some results. And that must have been tense, waiting for the results. As I said, CTE not able to be diagnosed until postmortem, but they were giving him some ranges of where he landed on the tests, and so his fiancée Jamie Holtz and Chris had got together. And they, in the podcast studio, the Knuckles Nyland podcast studio, they waited for these results. And the results were that he was within all the normal ranges for his age, for his education level, for his gender, with respect to cognitive tests, the memory tests, the motor tests that they had done with him. So all good news. But Chris Nyland was a courageous player, but continuing that courage to help this study. And an excellent article in the New York Times about all of this. And just want to salute and take, as you said, a tough topic, but there's some good news here, is that progress is being made and that Chris Nyland is helping to advance the knowledge base, the study on this issue, to be able to learn more about it. And maybe then those results can be presented to Gary Bettman, who denies any kind of connection, and we can see some real change.
Yeah, very courageous and truly amazing that he's donated some of his time towards this and made it kind of public as well. So good on Chris Nyland for that. So coming up, we'll hear a message from our sponsors, DraftKings, and then we'll get to our big topic segment, and we'll get to our 10 pressing questions for this year. Stay with us. This is the Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio.
We are back with another week of football, and DraftKings Sportsbook is keeping us in on the NFL action with great offers every single game day. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Throw $5 down on any of this week's epic matchups to walk away an instant winner. And DraftKings isn't stopping there. All customers can take advantage of 2 new offers every game day this September. Football's more fun when you're in on the action, so download the app now and sign up with code THPN. New customers can bet just $5 to get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, with code THPN. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, KS. Licensee partner Golden Nugget Lake Charles, LA. 21 plus age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/football terms for eligibility, terms, and responsible gaming resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply.
Welcome back to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. I'm Michael Spinella. You can find me on Twitter at The Spinella. With me in the studio is the president and founder of Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. Make sure to give him a follow on Twitter at Rocket Sports. You can also follow at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and check out the website canadiensconnection.fm. Also, just a little reminder here to subscribe to the Canadiens Connection podcast in the player or on your favorite podcasting app. That way you never miss a single episode. And, well, this is going to be a pretty jam-packed and fun segment. Lots to talk about, as we said. The expectations bar is being raised for the Montreal Canadiens in the 2023-24 season. While management does not want to use the P word, the P word being playoffs, they have not ruled out the possibility of a breakthrough. That said, it's likely once again that Habs fans will have to maybe lower their expectations, be a little bit more realistic. The primary objective here this season is going to be development of Montreal's young core and players. Training camp is currently underway, and a number of key issues remain unanswered. In this segment, we will present to you our 10 burning questions for the Montreal Canadiens in the 2023-24 season. Longtime listeners will remember last season, episode 210, we presented our 10 most pressing questions. And some of these questions are still unanswered, and they graduated over to the burning questions. So this is going to be a lot of fun. And Rick, are you excited to get this one underway?
I am. And we're not going to have a lot of answers here because these are things that are going to play out. They're going to play out over during training camp, over the course of the season. But we're just highlighting these because they're important and they're things to watch on, and they're things that we know that Jeff Gorton and the management team is looking at. and we're going to be looking and watching them very closely as well. Some of them will be resolved by the end of training camp. Some of them won't be.
Yeah, and I think some of these could even go into next season as well, like
Yeah.
you said. So let's start things off here. Our number one question here. Which talented young forwards will make opening night roster? We put out a few different options here, but it's not limited to this. Raphael Harvey-Pinard, I believe he's not waiver eligible. Jesse Ullinen, who does require waivers. Owen Beck, I think the options for him would be junior or NHL, unless he gets exemplary status and is able to play in the AHL. Emil Heineman, Elias Anderson, Sean Farrell, Riley Kidney, and Joshua Waugh.
So, of course, Raphael Harvey-Pinard is going to make it. Of course he is. He's played so well. Look the way he played last. Okay, we get that. We get it. We get it. But as you said, an important part of this is a puzzle, putting together a puzzle. Some of this is going to depend on what happens with Cayden Primeau. How does Cayden Primeau decision to affect the forwards? Well, the overall roster complement has to be, there's, the number, the 23 number. And if they keep an extra goalie, it means they're going to have to keep one less defenseman or keep one less forward. And 4 other forwards have been added to that mix that help make it a logjam, like Tanner Pearson. So, is it because of he doesn't deserve to be on the team that Raphael Harvey-Pinard would be sent to Laval? No, maybe not. But he has that waiver exempt protection that would allow them to do that. Who on here has really stood out at camp? Elias Anderson, not really. Emil Heineman, he's looked very good at times, especially when he was up with the top line, and then maybe faded a little bit. Jesse Ullinen has what you're going to get from him is effort. Tremendous. Every time he's on the ice, he's going to give you his full effort. He has played on the power play. He's played on the PK, but not a lot of results there. Riley Kidney, a very skilled player, stood out maybe in at times, but when it gets rugged, not there. Joshua Waugh, offensive player, who is spectacular, and then you don't see for 2 periods. Owen Beck, who looks like one of the established players already. He doesn't look like a player who's just graduated from junior, but he could go back to junior. And Sean Farrell, I don't know that we've seen a lot from Sean Farrell. So there's question marks around all of these players, which makes us ask, which of these young forwards is going to make that opening night roster? We know that part of the equation is that Christian Dvorak is not going to be back. He's not going to be taking a spot. So put all that in your mixer, and you tell us who you think is going to make the opening night roster from this group of forwards.
Yeah, as of now, I feel like that's about as clear as mud, and we'll find out. And just because one of these players does make it onto the opening night roster doesn't mean that a different player might end up playing more NHL games. So this could be something for the long run as well.
For sure.
And our second question, I think this kind of connects to what we just asked, but we are asking, can Juraj Slafkovsky establish himself as a full-time top 6 forward in the NHL? Well, last season in his rookie campaign, he got 39 games before injury. He scored 4 goals, 10 assists, and he put up 33 penalty minutes. He was a minus 13. I think overall we were quite underwhelmed by his rookie campaign. He spent most of that on the 4th line as well. He got a few looks in the top 6, but those were very short-lived. And to be honest, so far in this training camp, he's had maybe a couple moments, but you mentioned a player that comes out, he looks good for a little bit and then disappears for 2 periods. I think with Juraj Slafkovsky, he'll have one or two moments and then he'll disappear for a few games even. What are your thoughts on this one, Rick?
Yeah, I think what we want to see is Juraj Slafkovsky use his talent. What we were promised is that he was going to be an intimidating, imposing player. He was going to be hard on the forecheck. He was going to be difficult for defensemen to handle. He's got a good shot. He needs to shoot more. And all of those things were the reason that the Montreal Canadiens selected him first overall. Has he shown glimpses of that? Maybe not so much that last year. But maybe a little bit more in training camp. But to be a top six forward, you have to show that every night. And maybe can he achieve? Can he be a full-time top six forward in the NHL by the end of this season, or is it going to be next season? That's it for the Montreal Canadiens. To this rebuild depends on the draft picks that they make panning out. And Juraj Slafkovsky has got to be one of those who is a huge success story, and easy for you to say. And that's got to happen, and it's got to happen in now. Jeff Gorton said, "Be patient." So, over the course of the year, will it happen? Is it into next year? That's what we're asking.
Yeah, and you mentioned his talent is the way he's going to be able to establish himself. I hear a lot about the size and the strength. I love size. I love strength in a hockey player. He's not going to be a Tkachuk. I think it would be a disappointment if Juraj Slafkovsky ended up being the guy that battles in front of the net. I think he can be more than that. And one of the things, too, is his skating, struggling to keep up, especially when playing with fast players. You're going to get fast players in that top six. So he certainly has a lot of work cut out for him. Well, we know he put a lot of work in the offseason. We'll see if any of that does pay off come time in the regular season.
Yeah.
Question 3, will Alex Newhook reach his full potential and be worth his huge acquisition price? So if you remember, he was worth a late first and a very early second. And so far, his NHL career, it's not been great. This is a guy that was drafted kind of in the middle of the first round by the Colorado Avalanche, has not lived up to expectations. Last season, in 82 games, he got 14 goals, 16 points, 30 points. That's okay. Maybe not what you wanted from Alex Newhook. I think he could be a little bit more than that. He'll be given some opportunities, and I think this is going to be about, a little bit about what Alex Newhook can do, and also, does Marty St. Louis honestly just have a magic wand?
For 2 full seasons in the NHL, he's averaging 30 points, just over 30 points. And for a 16th overall pick, that's certainly not good enough. But what was the situation in Colorado? A tremendous team, lots of talent there. Was he pushed to the bottom of the lineup? No, he was given opportunities. He just didn't produce when he got those opportunities. He'll have a much longer leash in Montreal. He'll have the Marty St. Louis magic wand, tapped on him several times this season. And can this be a diamond in the rough discovery again by Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes? It has to be for the Canadiens to accelerate this rebuild.
Well, the last diamond in the rough that Marty St. Louis' magic wand worked on was a Kirby Dach, and that's right into our next question here. Can Kirby Dach fulfill the expectations of a 3rd overall pick and thrive as a team's full-time second-line center? I believe we had, if not a very similar question last season when we were doing these. And he played pretty well since coming to Montreal in 58 games. He's put up 38 points. He's come in to be the second-line center for part of the season anyway, although he spent quite a bit of time on the wing with Suzuki and Caulfield. I think he's looked good. He's looked good in camp. You can see his size is good. His skating is good. The skill is there. He can be defensively responsible. let's see it for a full season, and let's let him cook. I don't think he's not established himself as a full-time second-line center, just for the reason that I think he bounced him around quite a bit on the roster last year.
Yeah, and that was unfortunate. Marty St. Louis looking for a player who could complement Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield. They needed a player who was defensively responsible, who would be able to go in and dig the puck. And Kirby Dach was able to do all of that. But was he best used there? No, I don't think so. For this trade, for the trade that they made to work out, to get the full value out it, you have to let Kirby Dach reach his potential as a center. And let's hope that he's placed there from the start of the season and gets to immerse himself as a center and be a dominant center, be an imposing player, a player who can intimidate because of his willingness to use his size and speed. And let's see that for a full season.
Yeah, and we've said a lot of good things about Kirby Dach there. A couple things that I do want to see from him this season. I want to see his offensive production go up, and I want to see fewer penalties taken.
Yeah.
That was kind of a struggle for him, and I think that's why he hadn't really had an opportunity to fully establish himself.
And on the face-off, we need to see his percentage going up. We see some positive results in the preseason so far. But remember, the Canadiens have not been playing against, he hasn't been playing against a legitimate second-line center so far. If he is paired with Sean Monahan, at least, they can both take the face-offs on the strong side, and that might be helpful. Really like to see that pairing continue through the regular season.
And what about his former line mates in Suzuki and Caulfield? Are Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield elite-level core pieces of a Stanley Cup contender? This one's going to be ongoing. So far, I think Caulfield has been a really good goal scorer. He's not played an entire NHL season yet, but despite that, he's had great success when healthy and without Dominic Ducharme around. Last season, he got 26 goals. He seemed to be on pace for over 40. So if he can keep that up and he can stay healthy, I think that's a really gem of a piece there. Maybe one of the best young snipers in the league. As for Suzuki, I think he's been the best Hab overall for the last few seasons. But I think there's still some question as to whether or not he is that true number one center. I did a quick comparison of his numbers last season to some of the other number one centers in the Atlantic Division. The only other number one center he had more points than was Patrice Bergeron. I feel like that's probably not a great comparison, though, as we know Bergeron, more of a defensively responsible guy, and he just retired, so he's a little bit older. So you want to see Suzuki continue to improve. He got to 66 points last year in 82 games. Let's see those numbers go up. You had guys like Stützle and Matthews and Barkov and Braden Point in this division. If he can get anywhere close to what their numbers are, then great. I think we have a great duo, but I think both still need to develop.
Michael, I can't believe you asked this question. These are two guys who are media darlings. They're fan favorites. They're the face of the Montreal Canadiens, and yet we're asking if they can be elite core pieces of a Stanley Cup contender. Well, yeah, and truth be told, I contributed this question because it's a question that fans quietly, mind you, but ask us because sure, in some sectors they're sacred cows. They are the face of the team. They're fun. They're committed to Montreal. They love playing in Montreal. However, when we get to the point, when the team gets to the point, when we follow this rebuild to where Gorton and Hughes want to take it, that is being a perennial Stanley Cup contender, are these two guys the ones who can lead a top line in that direction? And the answer, if they were to perform as they're performing now, the answer is no, definitely not. Nick Suzuki has to be a point-a-game player if he's going to be in that role. And Cole Caulfield has to, yes, he has to score on the pace that he's on, but he has to play close to 82 games. So this is something, again, isn't something that's going to be answered very very quickly. It's something we have to keep an eye on. And I think we need to be honest. We're not criticizing. We're not saying they're not good guys. We're not saying they aren't committed to the team. We're not saying any of those things. We're just being realistic that come that time when the Montreal Canadiens are at the top of the standings year in and year out, will it be Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield leading the pack?
Yeah, I think those are all great points that you bring up too. And I hope I don't go too far away from what we're actually talking about when I say this, but this is why I do enjoy going and watching some of those Stanley Cup contenders play, just to see what they have in the tank.
That's right.
And try to compare a little bit. And just because Suzuki and Caulfield might not live up to that right now doesn't mean they're not on their way. They're both young and developing, so you want to see, like you said, Suzuki develop into a point per game, if not more. You have to see Caulfield continue that scoring pace in an 82-game season that doesn't get cut unexpectedly due to injuries or whatever reason. So this is still an ongoing question. Of course, we both like these players. I think they're still the two best players on the team right now. Let's just see how this develops, and when this team gets good, are they still going to be the two best players, I think is what we're asking.
Exactly.
Moving on to defensemen, who are the 7 defensemen who will make the opening night roster? They have a lot of players in the tank right now. There's Michael Matheson, David Savard, Jordan Harris, David Reinbacher, Gustav Lindstrom, Justin Barron, Cayden Primeau, Arbor Jack-Eye, Jonathan Kovacevic, Chris Weidman's currently injured, and there are other options available as well. This is going to be interesting to see how this goes.
For sure. And again, who are the defensemen? Question 6, who are the 7 defensemen who will make the opening night roster? Could be changed to who are the 6 defensemen who will make the opening night roster, depending on what happens with Cayden Primeau. They may only carry 6 defensemen. How can they carry 6 defensemen? What if an injury happens on the road? Well, until the end of October, the Canadiens don't have any lengthy road trips. It's just in and out. So for the first couple of weeks of the season, possible. It's not what you want to do. But with Chris Weidman, the 7th defenseman, who he may be the 7th defenseman when he comes back out, it's something possible. So could we have a Matheson, Goulet, Jacques Savard, Harris, Kovacevic, and send Barron to the AHL to Laval? That's possible. Or we're still waiting to see whether one of the other defensemen proves himself, stands out in the preseason to make the case that they should be added ahead of one of those guys I mentioned.
And continuing along on the topic of defensemen, our next question here is, which recalled defenseman from Laval will have an extended stay with the big club? We have a few options for you as well. Justin Barron, William Trudeau, Logan Mailloux, Jaden Struble, Gustav Lindstrom, Matthias Norlinder. Do you have any thoughts on this one? I think that these are all legitimately good prospects and guys that do have potential to play in some NHL games this season.
William Trudeau looked pretty good in the rookie camp and wore the C there. Is it conceivable that he could be recalled for a game or two this season? Yeah, absolutely. Jaden Struble, at times, very physical. Might you want to bring him up for a game or so? Gustav Lindstrom, I don't think we've seen anything yet, only appearing in one preseason game. Matthias Norlinder plays really well, offensive-minded when there's not contact. Justin Barron, he's got the inside track, perhaps, although he wasn't very good on Friday night against against a depleted Toronto Maple Leafs squad. Logan Mailloux, he's going to be recalled for sure this year. But is he the one that's going to make an extended stay? It's not, are they going to be recalled, but are they going to be recalled and stay for a period of time? And of course, that's going to depend on injuries and whatnot as well. But an interesting grouping there to pick one to say they will play the most games in the NHL this season.
Yeah, and looking back on last season, Barron had a bit of an extended look. He got into 39 games. Gustav Lindstrom had an extended look with the Detroit Red Wings as well, getting into 36 games. I was pretty impressed with what Barron was able to do last season when he had the opportunity. I think Lindstrom has been considered a little bit lackluster in Detroit. So again, just something to keep in mind. And honestly, I think any of these guys could emerge as that guy that comes up and stays with the big club for a while.
Yeah.
Taking a look at the goaltending situation, our next question is, where will Cayden Primeau make the majority of his starts this season? Montreal, Laval, or somewhere else? Last season, he got into 3 NHL games. He had 41 AHL starts, some injury issues, and of course, there's that bomb that Darren Dreger dropped. Reportedly, the Habs front office are worried about losing a goalie on waivers, so they might be willing to retain 3 of them on the NHL roster.
Yeah, or willing to trade one of them, trade another goalie. Traded Casey DeSmith a few weeks back, bringing in Tanner Pearson, and could be interested in that respect. I don't know what to really take from the Montreal Canadiens. Which direction they're going to go in. I think for Cayden Primeau, who's had an average career in the AHL and an unspectacular career in the NHL, that I think for his benefit, and when we played the clip early, it's time for him to move to a new organization. If that comes via trade, if it comes with him being placed on waivers, do the Canadiens, are they going to be upset if he's claimed without getting anything back? I don't know. I think that if they can see what's going on with the young man, they can see that he's just being tormented by being in Montreal by himself. Really, he's in his own head. We had a podcast earlier this summer. You should go back and listen to some of those. We had Marty Baron on, a great guest, and he had some really great things to breaking down Cayden Primeau's his lack of progress. And you should go back and listen to Marty Baron, who is who studies goaltenders, and he said that the Canadiens, they should place him on waivers, and they shouldn't be concerned if he's picked up. And listen, if he isn't, it's tough to. There's so many players getting squeezed through the waivers system at this time of year. He might squeeze through and end up back in Laval, and a tandem of Cayden Primeau and Jakub Dobis. As long as Jakub Dobis gets at least half the starts, I don't think anybody would be too upset with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you alluded to this on another recent podcast. There are some teams out there looking for goalies. Colorado's made it known. We now know that Tampa's not going to have Vasilevsky for a while. If either of those teams or any other team call and they ask about Primeau, Montembeault, or Allen, you got to listen. Yeah, yes. Absolutely.
Yes. Say yes.
So we'll go on to our next question before we start spreading too many rumors. The question here is, who is the next NHL veteran traded or put on waivers by Kent Hughes? A few options here: Tanner Pearson, David Savard, Josh Anderson, Christian Dvorak, Jake Evans, Sean Monahan. I threw in Weidman, a goalie, and Armia as well. We might even know how this plays out before the season starts. We know last year Kent Hughes talked about getting plenty of offers on Josh Anderson, so that's still definitely something that's going to be in the rumor mill.
For sure, and the key here, which veteran player is it going to be? Yeah. I think it's clear that David Savard is not going to finish his contract in Montreal, and he'll be moved to to get a piece back, an asset back. And Josh Anderson, he when he plays well, he looks great, and then he disappears for a while. Christian Dvorak has been a shell of himself in Montreal. Wouldn't be surprised to see him move on. Sean Monahan, if he can have a great season at the trade deadline, he brings back another piece. Tanner Pearson, is he traded? Maybe not. But we remember the Vancouver Canucks were intending to put him on waivers so they could send him to Abbotsford. Will Kent Hughes, just after acquiring him, exposed Tanner Pearson to waivers. So the question here is, who is the next NHL veteran player who's going to be put on waivers or traded? And we want to hear from you. Who do you think it's going to be?
And we get to our final question. And this question is, Jeff Gordon announced several changes in the offseason to rebuild the medical team. Will the Canadiens be less impacted by injuries than last year? In that department, I don't think they're off to a very good start with Dvorak being out, with Wideman being out. They led the league in man games lost for a couple of seasons now. And we mentioned over the course of the offseason and even into last week, they've made a lot of changes to that medical staff. Rick, where do you stand on this one?
A lot of changes to the medical staff, including the chief medical physician, the head of the physiotherapy area, all of that. They've made major changes, brought in some new equipment, as we told you last week. I think I have seen some change in that Mike Matheson out for precautions. We're not putting him in there. Christian Dvorak out a little bit longer than we expected. Chris Wideman the same. I think in the past, players have been rushed back in. We saw that with Monahan and then sustain a different injury. I think the Canadiens are going to be far more cautious. And in doing so, that number, if that number doesn't, it's going to improve. It's going to improve. Part of it was luck as well, bad luck the last two seasons. So I expect that number to improve. But if you're keeping guys out to make sure they're fully ready before they go back, and that number balloons because of it, then I think that's a good thing.
So that brings us to the end of our 10 questions, or 10 burning questions going into this season. But you know what, Rick? I think we have a nice little surprise and a bonus question.
Why not? Yeah, our listeners deserve it. They've been loyal with it. They've been downloading the podcast in huge numbers over the summer, so we're going to give them a bonus.
And I like a nice round number 11 question, so
all right,
let's get to it. Which Canadiens prospect in this CHL, NCAA, or Europe will make the biggest impact this season? A few options along the way here. In the CHL, you have Florian Jacquet and Quentin Miller. In the NCAA, you have Lane Hudson and Jacob Fowler. Over in Europe, you have Adam Engstrom and David Reinbacher. There are lots of options to this as well. We might find out some more options if there are cuts to the camp. And we want to hear from you what your thoughts are on this one.
Absolutely. Jeff Gordon mentioned Adam Engstrom. David Reinbacher we're including in there. We're making an assumption. No, he hasn't been sent there. He could stay with the Canadiens. We're making an assumption that he's going to be back with his team in Cloton. Jacob Fowler, the quote machine in the NCAA, is going to have his work cut out for him, moving from the USHL to the NCAA. Lane Hudson, who set a ton of records last year, expecting him to have a great season. Florian Jacquet, liked him in rookie camp. He's bigger, stronger, faster. We'll see what he does. And the goalie in the queue, Quentin Miller, with Quebec Rim Parts. One thing's for certain. We're going to tell you all about these players. We're going to have our eyes on them and all of the Montreal Canadiens prospects, wherever they may play.
And because we love asking questions so much, one last thing before we head into our final break, our Canadiens Connection question of the week, the question we're asking all of our listeners: who has impressed and who has disappointed you the most so far this preseason. We want to make sure we hear from you, and we'll get to some thoughts from our listeners in this next segment, but it's time to take our break first. Stay with us. You are listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
The Canadiens Connection is proud to be a partner of Rocket Sports Media, digital media publishers of sports and entertainment websites. Their mission is to build a worldwide network of sports fans who are informed, engaged, entertained, and connected. Learn more about RSM, its team, and its portfolio of brands at rocketsportsmedia.com. I bet you enjoy sporting your best Habs jerseys, dressing up your kids and pets in the cutest Habs gear, and showing off your decked-out hockey cave or fanning. Well, don't just show your friends, show your Habs. The Rocket Sports Media team wants you to boast your finest pictures for our global network of Montreal Canadiens fans. Include the hashtag #ShowYourHabs when posting your fan photos on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Then log on to showyourhabs.com to see your entries, along with photos and posts from Habs fans all over the world. A proud member of the Rocket Sports Media Network. If you're a business owner looking for the perfect platform to reach a targeted audience of customers, Rocket Sports Media is the solution. Our global hockey community provides unmatched social media reach to an attentive demographic of sports and entertainment fans. We can provide visibility to your company, helping you to engage and leverage this prime group of potential clientele. In addition, we also offer sponsorship opportunities for fan events and featured areas of website content, giving you name and logo recognition. Visit rocketsportsmedia.com to contact us regarding this unique marketing opportunity. For the most trusted source of news, analysis, and features about the Montreal Canadiens, log in to thn.com/Montreal, your year-round source for anything Habs related. That's thn.com/Montreal.
Welcome back to episode 263 of the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. Please make sure you're following at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and you can check out the website canadiensconnection.fm. Also, feel free to reach out and text us anytime via the Rocket Sports text line. 5853-ROCKET is the number. That's 5853-ROCKET. And that was a pretty fun second segment that we did there. Lots of questions going into this season and plenty of things to have to keep up to date with. And Rick, for all our Canadiens coverage, I believe we have it all in one place. And where can people find that?
Have you heard? We're part of the Hockey News. We look after the Hockey News Montreal. THN.com/Montreal. THN, thehockeynews.com/Montreal. If you go there, remember in previous years we've had some of our content spread out, some of the AHL content and prospect content spread around. No, one place, THN.com/Montreal. It's all the Canadiens coverage. And when we say Canadiens coverage, that's for the entire organization, including AHL, ECHL, prospects, all in one place. I'm going to say it one last time because you need to bookmark this. THN.com/Montreal.
You can also find us on YouTube. Just head over to our YouTube channel, search @AllHabs, and you will be able to pull that up. On there, you will be able to find the Habs Hockey Report Show. That's hosted by Amy Johnson. She puts out a new episode every week, and this latest episode is entitled Cole Caulfield is Back, 5 takeaways from Habs versus Sens. So if you like Cole Caulfield, if you like the Habs, if you like the rivalry between the Habs and the Sens, that's an episode for you. So tune in, watch all our episodes. She does a fantastic job. And leave a comment if you have any questions or you want to get involved in the conversation there. Leave a like, hit that subscribe button, and never miss a single episode. Also, we started putting this podcast in the feed on YouTube. You might even be listening to me say this while you're listening on YouTube. But for those who are not aware, you can head over there if you like this podcast, and you can check it out as well. You'll see both mine and Rick's amazing faces on there as well. Some pretty amazing graphics as well. So like I said, make sure you hit that subscribe button, leave a like on all the videos that you like, and don't hesitate to leave a comment and get engaged in the conversation.
If you have YouTube on all day long, maybe you're at the office, maybe you're studying, maybe you're in class, then make sure that our YouTube channel is part of your listening for the week, and yes, you can find our podcast there, as well as Michael will tell you, on any podcast network.
Yeah, we actually have 2 Rocket Sports Radio podcasts to talk about. First and foremost, the Press Zone. You can find every single episode of that at thepresszone.fm. This is going to be your inside source to everything Montreal Canadiens prospects, AHL, Laval Rocket. If you want to keep up with that, make sure you tune into that every single Tuesday. That's when the episodes come out, hosted by Amy Johnson, our AHL guru, Patrick Williams, and sometimes Rick Stevens will step in there as well. So that's a can't-miss podcast. Also, this podcast, you can find every single episode at CanadiensConnection.fm if you've ever missed any, and you can subscribe to it on any of your favorite podcasting apps, wherever you get your podcasts. We're going to be here every single Saturday. We were here every Saturday throughout the summer. Now that we have the season underway, you can continue to listen to us, and we'll give you all the updates and topics that you want to hear about. And Rick, I believe that we are recruiting for the Rocket Sports team. If people are interested in joining the Rocket Sports team, what's the best way for them to reach out to us?
Now, if you've been listening, you've heard me mention a website and join our team and submit it that way. If you haven't, listen, if you submit something to us, we're going to respond to you. If you haven't heard back from us, then we're going to ask you to contact us again. Understand that Apple products don't really like the forms that we've been using, and so the information has gone into the ether. So reach out to us and just send us an email, hello@rocketsportsmedia.com, or send us a text at 585-3ROCKET and say, listen, you got a good thing going there. I want to contribute. I want to help out. I want to be involved. I want to get some experience, and tell us a little bit about yourself. You can do it hello@rocketsportsmedia.com or 585-3ROCKET.
So now we'll get to our Canadiens Connection question of the week. You've heard it a few times. I'll reiterate it one more time. And that is, who has impressed and who has disappointed you the most so far this preseason? We want to make sure that we hear from you. I just told you the Rocket Sports text line, but Rick, if people have a little bit more to say, how can they email us?
Email us at hello@rocketsportsmedia.com. hello@rocketsportsmedia.com.
And throughout the week, we get tons of messages, tons of comments, texts, emails, and whatnot. And we'd like to highlight some of those on this segment right now. And we got a nice message from Leo. This is in regards to episode 262, entitled Full Camp, Few Chairs, Big Decisions. And, Leo sent us a nice long message, a really interesting one as well. We did talk about Bogdan Knyzhkov a couple times on this podcast and that previous podcast. They heard us talk about it, and they joined in and let us know that it's understanding that Knyzhkov joined a team unlike any other, both in Europe and North America. Igor Larionov declares that he is wants nothing less than to change hockey. Igor Larionov being Knyzhkov's coach over in the KHL. And Leo goes on to talk about the system. Well, what kind of system is this? Larionov preaches the importance of working with the puck. He completely rejects physical training. Igor calls it meaningless running around. Hockey players must gain physical condition through games and nothing else. And I like that, actually. That's very good from Igor Larionov. Was there any other parts of this that you wanted to highlight there, Rick?
Well, it's just the creativity that Larionov encourages creativity, and the swarming aspect of how he is able to control the game, control the puck, and then allow his players to be creative on the offensive side of the puck. Leo says, losing the puck is not a tragedy, but just part of the game. What does it mean for Kanushkov? Do the players need a player from such an unusual system? And then he says that it's an assumption, but Montreal shouldn't rush to bring him over. And as we've already said, they're not going to, because he's going to be 3 years in the KHL. Very fascinating. This sent to our email, sent to hello@rocketsportsmedia.com from your devoted listener, Leo. And he said, this is what I can add to your discussion. And we really appreciate everyone who adds to our discussion. This one in particular, when you get an email and the address is in a Cyrillic text, Russian, you got something, I think. And so we're happy to have this message, and happy to have it in English, by the way, from Leo.
Yeah, and make sure when you do reach out to us, let us know who we're talking to. We want to know your first name and where you're from. And if we like your message, well, we like most of the messages, but there are certain ones that we do like to highlight, and just let us know who you are, where you're from, and we'll read and talk a little bit about it on air. So coming up this week, we have a couple more preseason games to get to. Starting on today, Saturday, September the 29th, Toronto comes into Montreal for a 7 p.m. Kind of another Toronto B squad. Dressing for Montreal, you're going to get Caulfield, Suzuki, and Newhook on the top line. That second line is going to be built of Harvey-Pinard, Doc, and Slafkovsky. That's going to be interesting. We're going to get a glimpse of Gouli next to Reinbacher. That's going to be cool, too. And, of course, Montembeault and Dobis will be the two goalies dressing for that. After that, they get a day off, and then on October the 2nd, Montreal is going to go to Toronto. So that's another 7 p.m. start. So that Toronto-Montreal rivalry, I guess that's going in full force, isn't it?
And I think that we'll see a very different... the Toronto squad has been... it's been 3 games in a row that the Canadiens have seen the Toronto Maple Leafs, but I think very different Toronto Maple Leafs team on the Monday. I think we're going to see a more talented lineup at home by the Toronto Maple Leafs. So those are the 2 preseason games that we're looking forward to by the end of Monday. As I said, 5 of 6 games will be completed in the preseason, and so the coaching staff will be getting down to their final decisions. Something else we're going to watch, and I think both Michael and I'm going to speak for you here, Michael, that we're on the watch for the Jared Davidson entry-level contract signing. We want to see him signed to an ELC.
Yeah, give him more minutes. I think in one of the games he got like less than 8 minutes. So give Jared Davidson some more minutes. I think he deserves it quite a bit.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a wrap for us today. Thank you all for tuning in and listening. Make sure you're subscribed to the Canadiens Connection podcast in the player or on any of your favorite podcasting apps. You can also share it on social media if you like what you heard. Enjoy the week. We'll be back here next Saturday, October the 7th, for another great episode. Thank you all for listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
Click subscribe so you never miss an episode of Canadiens Connection. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram @Rocket Sports.